We're live in the CNN newsroom. I'm Jim Acosta in Washington. It's day 3 in America after the end of Roe versus Wade. Protesters are gathering outside the Supreme Court as a new CBS YouGov poll shows the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe versus Wade does not reflect the will of the American people. A 59% majority of U.S. adults disapprove. This video from a protest in Greenville, South Carolina shows the moment police detained several demonstrators. 6 people were arrested. A witness telling CNN it all started when counter-protesters leveled misogynistic slurs at women who were advocating for abortion rights. Already, abortion is effectively banned in 11 states. More states with trigger laws are expected to ban abortions in the coming days and weeks. Outlawing abortion after 6 weeks, as in Ohio and Texas, is such a severe restriction that procedures are essentially stopping there. Today, Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren is blasting the Supreme Court.
This court has lost legitimacy. They have burned whatever legitimacy they may still have had after their gun decision, after their voting decision, after their union decision. They just took the last of it and set a torch to it with the Roe versus Wade opinion.
But Republicans are claiming a major victory and giving one man the credit.
This is a huge victory for the pro-life movement. President Trump deserves a lion's share of credit here. He fought like a tiger to put 3 constitutional conservative judges on the court.
And CNN's Sunlen Sirfati is outside the Supreme Court for us, keeping an eye on the protests there. What are you seeing today, Sunlen?
Well, Jim, it is emotional and at times tense here down at the base of the Supreme Court. As you can see behind me, there is a large crowd that has gathered, and it's grown in size over the course of the day. I'll give you just a flavor from the streets here. As you see, a lot of protesters in opposition. The majority of people out here today in opposition of that ruling that came down on Friday against Roe. But we have seen some tense moments where there are some counter-protesters, those who are in support of the decision, and the two groups exchanging words back and forth. But I did speak to a lot of women that were out here today saying that this is something that they want their daughters to see. I spoke with many moms who brought their daughters, saying that this is history. This is something that they hope that their daughters over time will not have to deal with. You know, today has largely been peaceful, although tense, as I said. Certainly emotions running high on both ends of the spectrum, but it has been peaceful. The whole D.C. Metropolitan Police is on standby. We see a large police force out here today, but for the moment, Jim, very peaceful while people are protesting and let their voices being heard.
All right, Sunlen Sirfati, keep an eye on it for us. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. And joining us now is CNN political analyst and Washington bureau chief for the GRIO, April Ryan. Also joining us, CNN political commentator and Republican strategist Alice Stewart. Alice, you write in a new CNN op-ed that this decision is a victory for U.S. democracy. But we have to point this out. A new CBS poll shows 59% of Americans disapprove of the decision, including 2/3 of women. So how is it a victory for democracy when a majority of Americans don't agree with this?
It's a victory for the pro-life movement and for democracy, because what this does, this takes the important issue of abortion out of the hands of 9 unelected justices and puts it in the hands of elected representatives in the states. And we all know how democracy is. It is best when it is served of the people, by the people, and for the people, and in this case, closest to the people. So this isn't a nationwide ban on abortion. That's where a lot of people are getting this. This simply puts the decision back to the states. I saw on one of the signs there that said politicians in robes. That's exactly what this is not. This is the justice says this is not in our purview. This should be in the hands of the people in the state. And they, as Alito said, Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. This is not for us to decide. And
but Alice, you know, Republicans are talking about a nationwide ban on abortion. Yeah. That's not sending it back to the states.
No, this is
the pro-life movement wants to go further. The anti-abortion movement wants to go further than this, right?
Well, I can tell you what the pro-life movement is doing. They are working now to turn to the states, work on each individual state to continue to further pro-life issues. But also, simultaneously, Jim, we understand that this is going to have a huge impact on expectant mothers and children. We're also working to support them with crisis pregnancy centers, with alternatives to abortion, such as adoption. So there are many avenues in place for the pro-life movement to help those that are going to be directly impacted.
But one of the avenues they are pushing for a nationwide ban.
No, they're working.
That's not sending it back to the states. I mean, that's just not.
If they're not pushing publicly for a nationwide ban, it's quiet whispers that this will happen, because that's what's happening. Look at what's happening in Missouri. The Attorney General is already saying, look, this is done, we're going to prosecute, et cetera, et cetera. You have other states saying the same thing. They're on the way. Any Republican-led state, and this is going back to states' rights, let's talk about that too. The Supreme Court not only overturned Roe v. Wade, but they put back into the hands of states' rights issues that we heard a lot about during Katrina, when then President George W. Bush was saying we were waiting for the state to make decisions. This is a states' rights issue, and it's up to attorney generals who want to make a stand for Republicans who are very confused. You have one, okay, overturning Roe v. Wade, but then you're also talking about the death penalty at the same time. How about that? It's a lot of contradiction within this party where you stand.
Speaking of contradictions, let's remind everybody of what some of these justices had to say about precedent during their Senate confirmation hearings. Let's watch.
The Supreme Court of the United States has held in Roe versus Wade that a fetus is not a person for purposes of the 14th Amendment. And the book explains that.
Do you accept that?
That's the law of the land. I accept the law of the land, Senator, yes.
What would you say your position today is on a woman's right to choose?
Well, as a judge,
As a judge.
it is an important precedent of the Supreme Court. By it, I mean Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Been reaffirmed many times.
Alice, didn't these justices mislead the American people?
What they said was Roe was law of the land at the time, and it certainly was. Look, this was
But let me just ask
They weren't
you-
even asked if they would overturn.
But let me just, Alice, you and I have known each other a long time.
Exactly.
They misled the American people.
Yeah.
They did. They just did.
They
just
said
did.
exactly how they felt at that time during that confirmation hearing. But here's where
About
things
one of the most
here-
important Supreme Court decisions in American history. I mean,
here's one of the most important things to keep in mind. Roe was handed down 50 years ago. We've had tremendous advances in medical technology since then. Now we're able to see, doctors can see the development of the fetus in utero. We can see it at 15 weeks, the brain, the hands, the heart, the blood pumping through the bodies. The advances in medical technology have made a tremendous impact on when we value life.
Or incest?
I think there should.
What happens in rape or incest when a young child herself, 12, 13, 14, or 15, is pregnant? You don't allow for that. It's not allowed for.
I think there should be exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I disagree with that aspect that many laws have. I think there should be exceptions in those instances.
And then they are criminalized at 12, 13 if they're raped or have incest. They're criminalized. They could go to jail, face jail time, and the doctor could face jail time in certain Republican states. If indeed they want to make a tough decision and have services that the justices don't want them to have.
The penalties in most of the states are on the abortion providers. They're not on the women seeking the abortion. They're on the abortion providers. And they take...
For now.
That's the way it is now, and it's on the abortion providers.
Yeah, and this is a tough moment to accept for a lot of Americans. I mean, keep in mind what Donald Trump was doing last night. He was taking a victory lap last night on all of this, celebrating this decision as a victory. But the moment that got all of the attention came from Republican Congresswoman Mary Miller when she took the stage and said this.
President Trump, on behalf of all the MAGA patriots in America, I want to thank you for the historic victory for life in the Supreme Court yesterday.
Now, her campaign says that she mixed up her words and that she meant to say right to life. But Alice, for context, this is the same lawmaker who quoted Adolf Hitler last year and said, whoever has the youth has the future. So there is a troubling record here when it comes to Congresswoman Miller. What's your response to that?
I watched that several times. I truly believe she misspoke. She didn't mean to say that. I know you disagree with me vehemently. I truly think she misspoke, and her campaign has said she meant to say right to life. Look, she has a tremendously strong pro-life record. She is a mother and a grandmother and has supported the life issue for throughout her entire time in public office. I think she misspoke. And look, people that speak in public often, they say a lot of things and they misspeak. And I don't go after other people who shall remain nameless, who often cannot remember what state they're in, because I think people misspeak, and I think that's what happened here.
Okay, so here's the deal. The irony is just too much to bear. She is a congresswoman for the state of Illinois that is going to be the state where many people are sending people to who want to have these services, these hard services that they are planning to have. That's one. Number two, she says that in front of the man who is questioned about his racism. Okay? She doesn't fix her Freudian slip, if you will, in front of him. Now, if she made a mistake, I could see her saying white to life, white to life. She said white life, end of story. She did not change it. I hear you, I hear what they said, but why can't she come out and say it? Why can't she say, because it's making
And the reaction
news.
from the crowd, too.
It's too much.
I think there should be it's really quick to fix this from a communication standpoint, having been in a situation. Quickly put out a statement on social media and put an end to this, button it up, and people can
I'm not going to spin it. I'm going to call it what it is. She said white life. She could have fixed it, and she still could come out and say something now, Alice. White to life or white life. She never put a two inside of that and never corrected it in front of the man who has a problem with the other. I'm sorry. I disagree.
Again, I said I think she misspoke. She didn't mean to say it, but this has taken on a life of its own. It's gotten a lot of attention, and from a communication standpoint,
she needs to do more than what
her
office has done.
She needs to come out.
She needs to do more. That's just obvious.
Even if she goes on Fox and says something.
All right. Ladies, the conversation started before the segment began. I'm sure it's going to continue, but thank you both for coming in. We appreciate it. April, Alice, thank you. Coming up, as we continue to watch the nationwide protests over abortion rights, we'll get a firsthand account of what it was like inside a packed abortion clinic in Louisiana moments after the Supreme Court decision was announced.
I sold my car to pursue my dream of making Undercover Boots a reality. I moved back home to my childhood bedroom. With a little help from my friends, my idea started to come to life. Boots that were fun, colorful. Sure, I made some mistakes, like when my first shipment turned my mom's home into a warehouse, but I persisted. And with great partners like DHL, we are leaving positive footprints all over the world.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran. We are in Jerusalem.
Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the World with Becky Anderson, Monday through Friday on CNN.
This is a really important story. My name's Clarissa Ward. I work for CNN.
Assalamu alaikum.
Day in, day out, you see the reality of people living through this.
Ничего страшного.
Okay.
This is the front line.
On a human level, you find courage, sacrifice. This is what life is about.
A lot of people are wondering why.
You see the worst of humanity.
Putin might use a nuclear weapon. Absolutely terrifying.
But you also see the best of humanity. My job is to be present.
The human cost is right here.
And to tell these stories.
We're talking about families.
That is the most important thing.
I'm Clarissa Ward in Ukraine.
This is
CNN.
Minutes after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade on Friday, abortion providers in several states had to tell patients that their procedures were canceled. Louisiana is one of those states. At the Hope Medical Group for Women facility in Shreveport, some patients were already in the waiting room standing by for their procedure when they learned the news. Joining me now is an administrator from that clinic, Kathleen Pittman. Kathleen, thank you very much for being with us right now. We were just showing some of the protests outside the Supreme Court, and our crew there on the ground tells us that it's growing by the hour, so we're going to keep an eye on that. But let's talk about what's happening on your end, Kathleen. Can you describe what it was like inside your clinic when this happened, when it all went down?
Certainly. When we received the news, I actually had been glued to my computer all morning long, waiting just in case, and texting with attorneys as well. When we received the news, I did have to go to the front office, explain to the staff, and then make the announcement to patients. We were already receiving patients for their first visit. We have a 72-hour waiting period. The actual procedures that were scheduled for Friday were not due in until after lunch, so staff immediately got on the phone to start canceling those appointments. And it was difficult explaining to these young women that they actually have fewer rights than their grandmothers and even great-grandmothers in some cases had. So there were a lot of tears. There was some anger on the part of the staff as well as our patients.
And what did some of these patients say?
How can this be? How can they do this? How can they tell me what I can and cannot do? I think there was a big discussion in the waiting room about the justices and what had been said during confirmation hearings, because that's been coming up time and time again. So, explaining or trying to explain to the patients that despite what had been said during those hearings, it's what they're saying now that actually carries the weight.
And what is your clinic doing now for these patients?
We are not we're not continuing procedures. We are continuing with consults, primarily so these women can receive their ultrasounds. You have to understand, a lot of these women have waited anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks just to get in to see us for the first visit. So I think it's important that at this point in time, we go ahead and at least get their ultrasounds taken care of so they know exactly how far along they are. We're doing our best to refer them to other places. The phones, of course, went absolutely berserk. So we are still trying to figure out, we have not finished canceling for this next week as far as procedures. We had so many lined up for Saturday. We spent all of Friday and part of Saturday just going through Saturday and then, of course, Monday appointments.
And now we have this sort of hodgepodge mix of, the legality of where abortion is legal and illegal across the country. Are some of your patients planning on traveling to other states? Is there anybody there to help them do that if they are going to try to continue to have this procedure?
Some are, you have to understand the population we serve. Basically, most of them live at or below the federal poverty level. Most of them are already parents. So they're trying to figure out childcare, transportation, 2 visits, taking off work, having a driver, and also the cost, the actual cost for the procedure and the travel. So a lot of these women will not be able to make it. There are nonprofits that are trying to help, but there's a lot of questions in the legality of who can and cannot help some of these women, particularly the ones that were coming to us from Texas. We were already backed up as far as our patients' appointments go because we had such an influx from Texas as of last September. So, I mean, we were scheduled for 2 weeks out just for the consults. I have approximately 500 people on my waiting list just asking for an appointment, and all of this has to be redirected somehow.
You have 500 people on your waiting list, and now all of those folks will not be seen.
Correct. The best we can offer at this particular moment is letting them come in and at least have an ultrasound to confirm how far they are in the pregnancy.
All right. Well, this is having an immediate impact where you are and in so many different parts of the country. Kathleen Pittman, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, Russian missiles hit an apartment building in Ukraine's capital just as President Biden begins to meet with leaders at the G7. What message will that send to Vladimir Putin?
These troops, they are Russian. I've spoken to the commander. He said they are now in control. Over that way. It's a secret location. They're going to fire on Russian forces. There has been a ferocious battle here. There's unexploded grenades everywhere. We're being shown the powerful American guns, giving them an edge.
You downplayed the US intelligence assessment. Do you now regret that?
I'm in Kiev right now, and it is under attack, Mr. Lavrov, from Russian forces.
I'm being told by our security that we need to get our flak jackets on.
No matter where you are in this country, lives are being shattered.
There are thousands streaming out. It is at least a chance to save their own lives. Matthew Chance, CNN.
I'm Zain Asha, and this is CNN.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels. Connected to your world.
I'm Paula Newton in Ottawa, and this is CNN.
Explosions rocked the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv today as Russian forces targeted the city with a series of missile strikes. Ukrainian officials say at least one person was killed and 6 were wounded when missiles hit a residential apartment block. A 7-year-old girl and her mother were among those injured. Kyiv's deputy mayor says a kindergarten was also hit by missiles, but that no one was hurt. Russia's war in Ukraine is a chief focus of this year's G7 summit now underway. In Germany, President Biden and fellow G7 leaders are looking at how to step up the pressure on Moscow, but also reduce the ensuing economic challenges costing each of them politically back home. CNN White House correspondent MJ Lee joins me now from Austria near the summit site. MJ, I remember covering one of these summits when it went from being the G8 to the G7 because of what Russia was doing with Ukraine. So this is obviously a huge issue there.
Absolutely. And as you said, of course, the war in Ukraine is a major issue during this G7. What we've seen already on the first day is the President Biden and the other leaders coming together to try to continue to show that there is this united front against Russia. And in terms of ramping up that pressure on the country, one announcement that came was a ban on importing new gold from Russia. This is just one more way in which these leaders are trying to show that they want to squeeze Russia economically. And then the other thing that was a major focus earlier today was the announcement of these global infrastructure initiatives, which the U.S. is pledging to spend around $200 billion over the course of 5 years. We are talking about money that would go towards things like vaccine development, on fighting climate change, on dealing with clean energy and investing in that. That, of course, is of particular interest at a moment when we are seeing the global economy affected by the war in Ukraine, with energy prices on the rise and gas prices on the rise. And the broader theme in all of this, Jim, is the idea that democracies are coming together to go up against autocracies. Take a listen to President Biden talking about this earlier today.
We have to stay together, because Putin has been counting on from the beginning, and somehow NATO would and the G7 would splinter, but we haven't, and we're not going to. So can't let this aggression take the form it has and get away with it.
And Jim, you know very well that domestic issues always follow a president around, even when he is traveling abroad. Earlier today, reporters asked the president whether the Supreme Court ruling a few days ago overturning Roe v. Wade, whether that came up at all when he was meeting with these global leaders. And he was direct in saying, no, it did not come up, that Ukraine really was the focus. We obviously know that this has been top of mind for the president, but at least for today, he says that this was not an issue that came up, that the major focus of the meetings today was the war in Ukraine. Jim.
All right, MJ Lee, thank you very much. And you're looking live now at a growing protest outside of the Supreme Court here in Washington on the third day after Roe versus Wade was overturned by the justices. These protests appear to be peaceful so far, but the Department of Homeland Security, we should note, was quick to issue a warning on Friday against extremist violence as a result of what happened there at the Supreme Court. We're going to be taking a look at the role of threats and violence in our politics. That's next, live in the CNN Newsroom.
Today, we live in
in an unpredictable environment, and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
The missile struck right here. What is your interpretation of Putin's intention?
My show brings you the latest news and top news makers.
What does President Putin think he has achieved in Ukraine to date?
We just want to say stop to Vladimir Putin.
And we also dive below the headlines to explore vital issues impacting our lives.
What are you looking at for the future with these additional formations that you've talked about, and where? What are the UN and other countries doing for you? Is it enough?
It's crucial we make sense of what's happening.
We are doing this for our very survival.
What do you think a peace or a ceasefire or an end to this looks like?
And fully understand what's at stake.
We have will, we have guts, and we are fighting like hell.
Amanpour, weeknights on CNN.
There is a kind of dichotomy between the real economy that we are witnessing, be it on the consumer behavior or the optimism of the CEOs or the board, and on the other hand, there is the stock market, which is in a free fall, at least for the tech companies, and also the noise that we are hearing regarding either recession which is coming or inflation which is going up. And there is this situation which is a little bit strange because there is no convergence between what we are hearing and what we are seeing in the market.
This Chinese national treasure is more endangered than the panda. Its lichen-covered forest home at risk. In the high-altitude woodlands of southwest China's Yunnan province, the Yunnan golden monkeys, or black snub-nosed monkeys, are fighting for survival. Almost 100 monkeys are killed by hunters every year in the region, according to the Nature Conservancy.
Villagers rely on mountains. In the old days, they would often climb up the mountains for hunting and other activities such as gathering and cutting trees.
But as part of a forest monitoring campaign, Xu Hao trains local villagers to patrol the monkey's habitat and look for old wire traps.
This is the wire trap. Villagers tie it to the tree and use this to catch some animals.
His team has installed over 100 infrared cameras in the forest to monitor the monkeys, and golden monkey populations in the region are finally increasing, says Li Peng.
This monkey is one of the only kind of animals living in this high altitude. So the existence of this species is kind of important and critical to the whole world.
We're here now at the home of one of the FSB team, and my name's Clarissa Ward. I work for CNN. Was it your team that poisoned Navalny?
It's just been a chaotic scene here.
People are so exhausted. Just gonna help her carry this bag.
We were just in the hospital. It was shocking. Why do you think India has been hit so badly? Scores of Taliban fighters, and just behind us, the U.S. Embassy.
Why does a small group of women asking for their right to be educated threaten you so much?
Raise your hand if you love school.
I'm the one who has to look them in the eye. Can I have your word? These people are depending on you.
You can hear gunshots every couple minutes. And now they're pressing in. They want desperately to tell their story.
Over the past week, Americans witnessed plenty of reminders that more than 17 months after the insurrection, the U.S. remains a place where threats, intimidation, and outright acts of political violence continue. Congressman Adam Kinzinger, a Republican member of the January 6th committee, revealed a letter he says was sent to his home addressed to his wife that mentioned how they and their 5-month-old child would be executed.
There is violence in the future, I'm going to tell you.
And until we get a grip on telling people the truth, we can't expect any differently. 2024 is going to be a mess. And wake up, America. Wake up, Republicans, because this is not going to be good for you if you think it is.
On Monday, an ad from Republican Senate candidate Eric Greitens of Missouri featured the former governor holding a shotgun and calling for voters to join him in hunting down rhinos, or Republicans in name only. He then breaks into a home with a group of armed men in camouflage and says, quote, join the MAGA crew, get a rhino hunting permit. There's no bagging limit, no tagging limit, and it doesn't expire until we save our country. On Tuesday, election officials explained to the January 6th committee how they resisted enormous pressure from former President Trump and his allies to decertify President Joe Biden's 2020 win. They included top state Republican officials who explained how their lives were turned upside down.
There was one gentleman that had the 3 bars on his chest, and he had a pistol and was threatening my neighbor, not with the pistol, but just vocally. When I saw the gun, I knew I had to get close.
Eventually, my wife started getting the text, and hers typically came in as sexualized texts, which were disgusting. Some people broke into my daughter-in-law's home, and my son has passed, and she's a widow and has 2 kids, and so we're very concerned about her safety also.
They were not alone. We also heard from 2 former Georgia election workers, a mother and daughter, who explained what it feels like to be targeted by the most powerful person in the world.
Do you know how it feels to have the President of the United States to target you? The President of the United States is supposed to represent every American, not to target one. But he targeted me, Lady Ruby, a small business owner, a mother, a proud American citizen who stand up to help Fulton County run an election in the middle of the pandemic.
I don't want to go anywhere with my mom because she might yell my name out over the grocery aisle or something. I don't go to the grocery store at all. I haven't been anywhere at all. It's affecting my life in a major way, in every way. All because of lies. For me doing my job, same thing I've been doing forever.
But there was more. On Wednesday, the Washington Post reported there had been such an uptick in the number of violent threats against lawmakers on the January 6th committee, all the members were likely to receive security details. Then came Friday and the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. There was so much concern inside the Department of Homeland Security that officials there warned in a memo about potential extremist violence that could come in response to that ruling. The memo says federal and state government officials, including judges, probably are most at risk for violence in response to the decision, as well as warnings that targets could include First Amendment protected events, reproductive and family advocacy, healthcare facilities, and faith-based organizations. All occurring on the same week, a man pleaded not guilty to a charge of attempting to murder Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. And that was all in one exhausting week. Joining me now, CNN political commentator and host of Firing Line on PBS, Margaret Hoover, and CNN senior political analyst John Avlon. He's also the author of the book Lincoln and the Fight for Peace. John, I want to show you the CBS News poll where only 19% of Americans think that things are going well in this country right now. 81% say things are going badly. I have to think part of it, not all of it, but part of it is that we are so dangerously divided right now, John.
I completely agree. And those numbers are sometimes a Rorschach test. You know, if you feel that one political party, if you see signs of violence and insurrection, the persistence of the big lie, you know, the Supreme Court decisions that don't reflect a majority of the American people, in addition to inflation, the economy, and everything else, people are going to say, yeah, things are going in the wrong direction in our country. But that may not be that they've lost faith in America. In fact, I don't think they have. It may not be that things are going badly in their own lives. They're just looking at the ratcheting up of rhetoric and the dangerous divisions that are flirting with violence increasingly. And that's a rational response. I don't think it reflects the American character, but it's real and we got to deal with it.
Yeah, Margaret, there was an abortion rights protest in Phoenix at the state capitol where police used tear gas to disperse a crowd that had been pounding on the doors of the state Senate building. And then in Providence, Rhode Island, an off-duty police officer was arrested for allegedly punching a political rival at an abortion rights rally. He has since dropped out of a state Senate race there. I mean, what does that tell you about how the rest of this summer is going to go?
It doesn't bode well for it. Doesn't bode well for it at all, Jim, does it? Yeah. Look, we know that summer, I mean, any city, anybody who works in an urban city police force will tell you that summer is when crime ticks up, petty crime ticks up, serious crime ticks up. It's warm, people are outside, and things are very unsettled right now in this country, as we've seen from the polling and as we see from the news. And even when people, as you noted, John noted, sometimes feel fine about things in their own lives, they go on Facebook, they turn on the news, they engage with what's happening in the world, and the news is bad. And the things they hear are bad, and the things their friends are telling them are bad, and the things that are getting liked and spread around the internet are bad. And so there's a feeling of malaise and negativity that subsumes people, even when actually, you know, inflation, you know, people are struggling, but we're still in the wealthiest, most successful, freest country in the world.
Yeah.
And there's no perspective.
Yeah. John, you wanted to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I think it's important that we straighten our civic backbones a bit and regain a sense of confidence and optimism about who we are as a nation when seen with a sense of perspective, despite all the problems we're facing. We've been through far worse as a country. You and I have discussed this, right? I mean, you know, from the Civil War to the Great Depression to the dislocation and frankly violence of the late 1960s. There are differences today. In particular, one political party whose president has perpetuated a big lie and tried to overthrow an election. That is serious. That is unlike anything else. And that misleadership has percolated and normalized the rhetoric of political violence in a way that is real and is dangerous. And we got to wake up to the fact that when politics becomes tribal, that's when many of the worst things happen, not only in our democracy, but in all others. At the same time, we need to remember that that's a relatively small number of loud folks being artificially amplified on social media and in hyper-partisan hot boxes, like Margaret just said. So we got to remember that they're the outliers. They're the strange ones. And the vast majority of Americans are good and decent people. We got to remember that.
I agree with you, but you know, I think part of this, you know, I think goes into the area of accountability, and I think a lot of Americans want to see accountability after January 6th. You know, we're expected to learn more soon about these 6 Republican lawmakers who sought pardons after the insurrection. To me, that was one of the most damning details that we got in this past week at the hearings. The idea that there are 6 current members of Congress who allegedly, I guess, felt that they needed a pardon. What's your reaction to that?
They knew they did something wrong. They knew they had undermined the Constitution. They knew they were on the wrong side of history. And frankly, what's also interesting is that even against the backdrop of January 6th, the Trump White House didn't issue them a pardon. Jared Kushner, who was sitting there, was far more interested in pardons than he was in the whining threats of the White House counsel, who was threatening to quit at every turn. Didn't issue them pardons. They knew they had done something wrong. They knew they did something deeply, deeply un-American and unconstitutional.
And they thought they could get out of jail free card. And frankly, I think probably one of the reasons we may find out the White House didn't do it because it would have been seen as an admission of guilt on their part. But again, you get the surreal situation we're in, where so-called constitutional conservatives are the ones trying to overturn an election. You know, where libertarians are approving of a reduction in the right to choose. And look, there are a lot of good people in all political parties, but the problem is the way that the extremes have come to dominate the congressional and the elected offices has led to this. And so we do need a reckoning. Adam Kinzinger is exactly right when he talks about the need to look in the mirror and remember our best traditions across party lines. It's got to happen.
Yeah, and I think one of the aspects of the hearing from this past week, these hearings from this past week, that really sat with me in an unpleasant way was just how, I mean, it just seemed that the Trump team was working in overdrive. I mean, it was like this was all they were working on between the election and the insurrection, was how to overturn this election, meeting with lawmakers, meetings with the White House counsel, I mean, just about everything under the sun. And, what's fascinating about this is that unbeknownst to almost everybody is there was this documentary filmmaker running around inside the White House and getting all of these exclusive details. I mean, who would have known? I mean, I was there, and I still don't know how I didn't see this guy and his crew roaming around in there. And I guess he has this forthcoming documentary. I had a chance to talk to him yesterday about this, but here's a bit of a moment from that documentary that's coming out from Alex Holder showing Trump praising the insurrectionists. Let's watch.
I will tell you, they were angry from the standpoint of what happened in the election, because they're smart and they see and they saw what happened. And I believe that that was a big part of what happened on January 6th.
Yeah, yesterday we talked to Alex Holder about this, and he was mentioning how, I mean, and shocker, this just in, Trump showed no remorse when he was talking to him about everything that took place on January 6th. But how critical do you think some of this footage might be?
Look, it's visceral because you can see it. It's real time. And it's a reminder, pride cometh before the fall. They wanted to document everything, even they were trying to overturn an election. But I think, it's the fact that so many documentary camera crews were out there covering the Proud Boys and the president's family, ex-president's family, I think really does hammer home state of mind. And it's just a reminder, too, when he says they're smart, what he means is they bought my lies. When he calls on Mike Pence to be strong and other people to be strong, he means be weak, fold to me, and abandon the Constitution for short-term careerism. And it's stunning to see how many people were willing to do it, but thank God for those who didn't when it mattered.
Margaret, last word from you.
Always
the one piece I'll just add to what John said, and to your point, Jim, is what the cameras demonstrate is how deliberate all of this was and how well coordinated it was. It's not just what they were working on all the time, to your point, but this was a well coordinated, well organized, well executed plan that fortunately failed, but that we have absolutely got to make some changes legislatively in order to prevent that from happening again in the next presidential election, 2024. There are an Electoral Count Act that's winding its way through the Senate and the House of Representatives. We have got to tighten up that bill in order to prevent any of these conflicts between rival ballots, rival electors from various states. I mean, the idea that we learned 7 states had fake sets of electors, and Ron Johnson, a senator from Wisconsin, tried to deliver 2 of them to Mike Pence on January 6th. It's just outrageous.
Also, one of the Electoral Count Act, yes, also algorithm reforms. We can stop having the craziest conspiracy theories filter up to people's social media, news feeds, and to create an impression of a more divided country and elevate the most nonsensical conspiratorial nonsense, because that's part of what's making us crazy. And that's something also that the Congress can do, this Congress.
Yeah, and I think all those reforms and changes are important. I think the one thing I'll come back to, and I'll continue to come back to, is accountability. I think if there was a plot, if there were crimes committed, if people were acting in this just tremendously un-American fashion, there ought to be a punishment for that. There just should. And if there isn't, as people say, it's a dress rehearsal for the next one. So
there are laws on the books.
Yeah. There are laws on the books. They ought to be used. John and Margaret, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time. Coming up, a growing mystery in South Africa after 22 people are found dead inside a tavern. Very disturbing story. Live report next.
Redwood Materials is a sustainable battery materials company. So, we focus on building a closed loop ecosystem for lithium-ion batteries. We recycle old lithium-ion batteries of all different types, both automotive, but also consumer electronics. We take the materials out of those batteries, refine them, extract them, and then remanufacture them into new components that can go directly back into battery manufacture. So I see this eventually, going to be the vast majority of the materials that are going into batteries that will be recycled in the future. Batteries are amazing because they are so recyclable. More than 90% of the materials, those critical materials in the battery, can be reused many, many times without degradation. I think people are really realizing the benefits of having a high recycled material content, both in terms of the environmental footprint of the batteries, but also the cost of those materials.
Business never sleeps. As the sun sets in Seoul and Shanghai, deals are signed in Dubai, and Europe is already in play. New York prepares to make its first move. I'm Julia Chatterley, journalist, global market analyst, and host of CNN's First Move. Join me in the financial capital of the world for market-moving perspective on the news influencing global politics, culture, and finance. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers.
Bold moves, big deals, winning trades. It's all right here. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley. Weekdays on CNN.
Our mission is to see this young generation of leaders growing up make change in the world. My name is Edlira Debrane, and I'm the Communications Officer of Finnish School of Kosovo here in Kosovo, Europe. We created a wall of freedom, which is still in our halls. We organized a bake sale where we collected over 500 euros, which are going to be donated to an organization against domestic violence. I would say the one that we are most proud of is the Set in Stone Garden. For over a month, each student gathered rocks. We took these rocks, we wrote down our vows and pledges to end modern-day slavery, and then we took all those rocks outside in the middle of our schoolyard, and we spelled out My Freedom Day. So we had this really cool shot where everybody was shouting out My Freedom Day, sort of like a symbolic way to say that our pledges are actually set in stone and they will remain there forever. This, I believe, has made a very long-lasting impact on them, and it's something that they have vowed to actually take on in the following months. You'll see them around the school still doing other things for My Freedom Day.
From the tiniest warbler to the mightiest whale shark, nature is on the move, but natural paths are under threat. Now meet incredible conservationists, helping species cross highways, span flyways, and get from A to B.
This is nature's highway, and we must protect it.
Call to Earth, protecting nature's highways.
Saturday on CNN.
I'm Isa Suarez in London, and this is CNN.
You can help the refugees from Ukraine. Join the over 80,000 who've already raised millions for food, shelter, and more. Explore cnn.com/impact. Click to take action.
We're following a developing and very disturbing story out of South Africa today, where 22 people were found dead inside of a tavern. Some of the victims as young as 13 years old. CNN international correspondent Larry Madowo is following this story for us. Larry, are investigators finding any clues as to what happened? This is just baffling.
It is baffling, Jim, and we just don't have a lot of information right now. Investigators are still figuring out exactly what happened in this tragedy. A lot of heartbreak, outrage, and many questions about how people as young as 13 were in a tavern that's said to have been overcrowded, and their bodies were slumped on chairs and floors when police were called in about 18 hours ago in the coastal city of East London in South Africa. A police minister in South Africa who went to the scene and later to the morgue was reduced to tears, especially considering how young these people were. This is what he told reporters after.
But when you look at their faces, you realize that they're dealing with kids. You have heard the story that they are young, but when you see them, you realize that is a disaster.
Authorities are figuring out exactly the cause of death here. They say it was not natural causes. They say it was not a stampede, but they're carrying out autopsies and trying to figure out exactly what happened. And President Cyril Ramaphosa, traveling in Germany, has sent his condolences, and the whole country stunned by this tragedy.
Yeah, Larry, it's just a very sad situation there. Larry Madowo, thank you very much. Stay on top of that for us. We appreciate it. You may know Arthur Ashe as a legendary tennis champion, but his legacy goes far beyond the court. Here's a preview of the CNN film Citizen Ashe.
Everything is concentrated on the razor's edge. And you forget the score, you forget where you are. I feel that my body's floating within myself.
Arthur Ashe, bright young member of the United States Davis Cup team.
Some people think we are all brawn and no brains, and I like to fight the myth.
He started